My name is Jana Whitmore, and I'm 27 years old. I work as a graphic designer, which means I spend most of my days building color palettes, fixing crooked layouts, and turning other people's ideas into something beautiful enough to be noticed. That irony never escaped me. Because in my own family, I had spent most of my life feeling like a sketch someone forgot to finish. On the outside, my life looked normal. I had a steady job, a small apartment filled with plants I barely remembered to water, and enough client deadlines to keep me busy. But underneath that neat little surface was something I had carried for as long as I could remember. I was the middle child. Not in the cute, joking way people say it at parties. I mean the kind of middle child who learns early that attention is a limited resource, and somehow your name is never at the top of the list. My parents, Mark and Linda, were hard-working people. They provided. They showed up to work. They paid bills on time. They weren't cruel, at least not in the obvious way. My older sister Emily was 31, smart, confident, successful. The kind of daughter whose achievements were announced before she even walked into a room. Every promotion, every new apartment, every little victory became a family event. Then there was Ryan, my younger brother, 22, the baby. Charming, reckless, forgiven before he even apologized. Ryan could break a window and somehow everyone would laugh about how spirited he was. And then there was me. Jana. The quiet one. The dependable one. The one who didn't cause trouble, didn't demand too much, didn't make anyone uncomfortable. Growing up, I learned that Emily's victories came with dinners, speeches, and framed pictures. Ryan's mistakes came with soft laughter and second chances. Mine came with a quick nod, if anyone noticed at all. Once, when I was 16, I won first place in a regional art contest. I came home with my certificate pressed carefully between two folders so it wouldn't bend. I remember standing in the doorway, cheeks hot with pride, ready to tell everyone. But Emily had just received a scholarship letter. Ryan had fallen off his bike and split his lip. By dinner, my certificate was still in my backpack. No one asked why I was so quiet. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was being dramatic, sensitive, needy. But moments like that don't disappear. They collect. Quietly. Patiently. Like dust in a room no one opens. Family dinners were the worst. Emily would talk about work. Ryan would talk about parties, tickets, girls, whatever chaos he had survived that week. My parents would laugh, advise, praise, scold. I would start a sentence. Someone else would finish a different conversation. After a while, I stopped starting. Then came the week that changed everything. My parents invited all of us to stay at their house for several days. "It'll be nice," Mom said over the phone. "Just family, like old times." I wanted to believe her. And maybe that was my first mistake. Because my birthday fell right in the middle of that week. I didn't expect a party. I didn't expect balloons or some dramatic toast. I just thought, for once, there would be no excuse. Everyone would be in the same house. Everyone would know the date. They would remember. The morning of my birthday, I walked downstairs with this stupid little hope sitting in my chest. Mom stood at the counter, pouring coffee. "Good morning, Jana," she said. That was it. Emily was at the table, scrolling through her phone. Ryan was leaning back in his chair, telling Dad about some party where someone had apparently tried to jump into a pool with their shoes on. No one looked up. No one smiled. No one said happy birthday. I stood there for a second too long, waiting for the pause, the sudden grin, the "we got you." Nothing came. So I poured myself coffee and sat down like my heart hadn't just dropped through the floor. That night, Dinner broke something in me. Everyone was talking over each other. Emily was explaining some project at work. Ryan kept interrupting with jokes. Dad was laughing. Mom was asking questions. I reached for the salt. It was too far. "Can someone pass the salt?" I asked. No one moved. I waited, then tried again. "Salt, please?" Emily kept talking. Ryan laughed at something Dad said. Mom got up to check the oven. I looked around that table, at the faces of people who claimed to love me, and realized they weren't ignoring my birthday because they forgot a date. They were ignoring me because ignoring me had become natural. I stood up quietly. "I'm tired," I said. No one really responded. Upstairs, I closed the bedroom door and sat on the edge of my old bed. The room still had faint marks on the wall where my art posters used to hang. I stared at them until my eyes burned. For years, I had told myself it didn't hurt. But it did. It hurt in a way that made me feel foolish, small, like I was still that teenage girl holding a certificate no one asked to see. Then something colder moved underneath the sadness. If they wanted to act like I didn't exist, fine. I would show them exactly what invisible felt like. The next morning, I woke up calm, not happy, not healed, calm. That was worse. I started simple. After breakfast, I walked out the front door for a quick walk and left it wide open behind me. Not cracked. Open. The kind of open any normal person would notice. I walked around the block slowly. I stopped to talk to Mrs. Alvarez next door about her new dog. I even stood at the corner for a while, giving them plenty of time. When I came back, the door was still wide open. Inside, Emily was on the couch scrolling. Ryan was playing video games so loudly the walls seemed to vibrate. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen discussing groceries. No one had noticed. No one asked where I'd gone. No one asked why the door was open. I stood there in the entryway with this strange feeling in my chest. Part of me felt victorious. The other part wanted to cry. But I wasn't done. That afternoon, I went upstairs and turned my music up louder than usual. Loud enough that someone should have yelled. Loud enough that Dad should have knocked on the ceiling or Mom should have called my name. I paced across the floor. I let my steps hit hard. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Nothing. I sat on the bed and stared at the speaker. Was I really that easy to erase? That evening at dinner, I tried one last time to be normal. I asked Ryan about the party he had been bragging about. "Cool," he said, without looking at me. I asked Emily how her new project was going. She shrugged and immediately turned to Mom. "Did you ever send me that recipe from Tuesday?" I swallowed hard. Then I looked at my parents. "Do you remember when we used to have game nights every Friday?" Dad barely glanced up. "Schedules got busy, I guess." Mom didn't answer at all. That was when I knew. This wasn't in my head. After dinner, I noticed a small puddle of water near the kitchen sink. Normally, I would wipe it up without thinking. Jana, the helpful daughter. Jana, the quiet fixer. This time, I left it there. Hours later, it was still there. Everyone had walked past it. No one had cleaned it. No one had noticed that I hadn't. That night, lying in bed, I made myself a promise. I would not beg to be seen. I would not cry at the table. I would not explain pain to people who had spent years benefiting from my silence. If they thought ignoring me was easy, I was about to make it uncomfortable. By the third day, I stopped testing them. I stopped trying. That morning, I walked into the kitchen while Emily and Ryan were laughing over breakfast. Normally, I would smile, ask what was funny, offer to help Mom with fruit or plates or coffee. Not that day. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat down, and said nothing. Emily glanced at me. I stirred my coffee. Ryan looked like he wanted to show me something on his phone. I took a sip. For the first time, the silence belonged to me. The silence unsettled them faster than I expected. At first, it was subtle. Tiny pauses, confused glances across the kitchen. Emily looking up from her phone a second too long. Ryan hesitating before making another joke. They weren't used to me being absent emotionally, because that had always been my role in the family. Quiet support, background warmth. The person who filled awkward gaps without anyone realizing it. And now that I had stopped, the house felt colder. Ryan cracked first. He walked into the kitchen while I was drinking coffee and held his phone toward me. "Look at this meme," he snorted. Usually, I would have leaned over automatically. This time, I didn't even look up. A few seconds passed. Then another. Finally, he lowered the phone slowly. "Okay." Rude. I kept sipping my coffee. He stared at me, waiting for a reaction that never came, before muttering, "What's your problem lately?" No answer. He slammed the fridge shut harder than necessary and walked out. Emily noticed the shift too. That afternoon, she cornered me near the stairs while Mom folded laundry nearby. "What exactly is going on with you?" she asked, arms crossed. I looked at her calmly. She scoffed. "Seriously, Jana, you've been acting weird for days." I walked past her without speaking. Behind me, I heard her let out an irritated laugh. "Wow, okay." For once, I let her sit inside the discomfort instead of rescuing the conversation. That was the thing no one realized about being the quiet child. You become an expert at emotional maintenance. You smooth tension, fill silence, make everyone comfortable. And when you stop, people panic. The next morning, Mom asked me to help unload groceries from the car. Normally, I would have done it before she even asked. This time, I kept walking. "Jana?" she called after me, confused. I didn't stop. I heard the grocery bags rustling behind me as she stood frozen in the driveway. That evening, Dad asked me to fix something on his laptop. "You're good with this tech stuff," he said absent-mindedly. I nodded vaguely, then never touched it. By dinner, the tension in the house was thick enough to choke on. Emily kept shooting annoyed looks at me over her wine glass. Ryan looked more confused than angry now. My parents exchanged those quiet married glances that meant they were discussing me without actually saying anything aloud. I ate silently while everyone else stumbled through awkward conversation. Finally, Emily snapped. She dropped her fork against the plate with a sharp clatter. "Okay, seriously, what is your deal?" Dad looked up immediately. Mom froze. I calmly folded my napkin. "You've been acting like a complete jerk all week," Emily continued. "Ignoring people, walking away, pretending nobody exists." The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I stood up and carried my plate to the sink. Emily followed me into the kitchen. "No, don't do that. Don't walk away again." I rinsed the plate slowly. "Jana." Still nothing. "You know what?" Emily snapped. "Fine. Be immature." That word hit harder than it should have. Immature. Because apparently swallowing years of neglect quietly was maturity. But reacting to it was childish. I dried my hands carefully and walked upstairs while their voices followed behind me in hushed confusion. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me. Part of me hated this. I hated the tension, the coldness, the way Mom's face kept falling every time I ignored her. But another part of me, the exhausted, buried part, felt relieved. For once, they were uncomfortable instead of me. The next morning, I maintained the silence. Ryan asked if I wanted to play video games later. I shrugged and kept walking. Emily asked me to pass the syrup during breakfast. I acted like I didn't hear her. Mom tried asking if I wanted coffee. No response. The atmosphere shifted from irritation to concern. That evening, my parents finally cornered me in the hallway. Mom looked genuinely worried now. "Honey, what's going on?" Dad stood beside her, arms crossed tightly, but his expression was softer than usual. "You've been distant for days," Mom continued carefully. "Did something happen?" I looked at both of them. For one dangerous second, I almost broke. I almost told them everything right there in the hallway. About birthdays, about interrupted sentences, about feeling like furniture in my own family. But I stopped myself. Not yet. Because if I spoke too soon, they would explain it away, minimize it, turn it into one misunderstanding instead of years of accumulated hurt. So instead, I stepped around them and walked back into my room. Mom called my name quietly behind me. I closed the door anyway. By the fourth day, the entire house felt different. No loud conversations, no casual teasing. Everyone moved carefully around each other. Emily tried anger first. Ryan tried kindness. My parents tried concern. None of it changed the fact that they still didn't understand why this was happening. That evening, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when Emily walked into the living room and planted herself directly in front of me. "What is your problem?" she demanded. I shifted my gaze around her and kept scrolling. She threw her hands into the air. "Seriously? Jana, this is ridiculous." Still nothing. "You've been sulking for days because nobody gave you enough attention." That made me look up. Emily noticed immediately. "There it is," she said. "So that's what this is about." I stared at her quietly. "You're acting like a child," she continued. "You could have just said something." Something inside me twisted painfully at that sentence. Because I had said things. For years. Just never loudly enough for people who weren't listening. Emily sighed dramatically and dropped onto the couch beside me. "Honestly, this whole thing is exhausting." I finally locked my phone screen. The room fell silent. Emily waited. I looked at her for a long moment before standing up without a word and walking away. Behind me, she groaned in frustration. Later that night, Ryan knocked gently on my bedroom door. An actual knock. "Hey," he said quietly after opening it a crack. "You okay?" I sat at my desk, sketching absent-mindedly. He shifted awkwardly. "Do you want to play something? Maybe Call of Duty?" For a split second, I almost said yes automatically. Gaming with Ryan used to be one of the only times I felt included growing up. But I forced myself to shake my head. His expression dropped slightly. "Oh, okay." Before leaving, he hesitated at the door. "You know, if something's wrong, you can tell me." After he left, I sat frozen in my chair. That almost broke me more than Emily's anger did. Because Ryan sounded sincere. For the first time, someone sounded like they noticed there was actually pain underneath my silence. That same night, I overheard my parents talking downstairs. Mom's voice was hushed and worried. "I don't know what happened. She's never been like this before." Dad sighed heavily. "Maybe she's stressed." "No," Mom whispered. "This feels bigger." I closed my eyes tightly. Finally, someone realized this wasn't about one bad mood. The next morning, Mom made pancakes. Blueberry pancakes. My favorite. She placed the plate in front of me carefully, like she was approaching a wounded animal. "I thought you might want these," she said softly. I stared at the pancakes for several seconds before murmuring the first word I had spoken in days. "Thanks." Mom looked almost emotional, hearing my voice again. Across the table, Emily rolled her eyes. "Oh, so we're rewarding this now?" Before anyone else could respond, Ryan surprised everyone. Maybe if we actually listened to her once in a while, she wouldn't be acting like this. The room went completely silent. Emily stared at him. Mom blinked in shock. Dad slowly lowered his coffee mug. And me? I felt something crack open painfully inside my chest. Because for the first time in years, someone in my family had defended me without being asked. That night, everything finally exploded. We were sitting around the dinner table in near silence when Emily slammed her hand against the table hard enough to rattle the plates. "Enough already," she snapped. "What do you actually want from us, Jana?" I looked up slowly. "You've been ignoring everyone for days," she continued. "If you're upset, just say it." Something inside me finally gave out. "It's not about a few days," I said quietly. "It's about my whole life." The room went still. I looked at all of them, one by one. Mom clutching her napkin, Dad staring at me carefully, Ryan suddenly unable to meet my eyes, Emily frozen in place. "You know what my birthday felt like?" I asked. Standing in the same room with all of you and realizing nobody noticed me at all. Emily opened her mouth, but I kept going. "It's not just birthdays. It's every dinner where I get talked over. Every achievement nobody cared about. Every time I became the easy child because nobody bothered checking if I was okay." Mom's eyes filled with tears instantly. Dad looked shaken. Ryan whispered, "Jana." I spent years convincing myself I was being dramatic, I admitted, my voice trembling now. But families are supposed to notice when someone disappears emotionally. Silence. Heavy silence. Then Dad finally spoke. "We failed you." It was the first honest thing anyone had said all week. Mom wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I thought because you never complained, you were okay." Emily looked completely different now, smaller somehow. "I didn't realize," she whispered. "I swear I didn't." Ryan rubbed a hand over his face. "I was kind of a jerk, huh?" I laughed weakly through the tears threatening my eyes. "Yeah, a little." That broke the tension enough for everyone to breathe again. Things didn't magically become perfect after that, but they changed. Mom started checking on me more often. Dad actually included me in conversations instead of half listening. Ryan began knocking before entering my room and asking me to hang out, instead of assuming I'd follow along. Even Emily tried. A few nights later, Mom suggested bringing back family game nights. Surprisingly, everyone agreed. We sat in the living room, arguing over Monopoly rules, while Ryan tried cheating horribly and Dad pretended not to notice. Emily got too competitive. Mom laughed so hard, she nearly spilled her drink. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, I realized something strange. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Later that night, Ryan stopped me in the hallway. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "I really am sorry." I studied him for a second before nodding. "I know." As I closed my bedroom door that night, I understood something important. Being seen sometimes means risking conflict. It means speaking even when your voice shakes. I had spent years shrinking myself to keep the peace, but I wasn't going to disappear quietly anymore.